Hello guys and welcome to the newest Middlegame Madness series episode. Today we are going to talk about the development advantage and I think I will make a few episodes to this topic so I can show you more games of that. The reason is because I think the practice and the deep understanding is really important of this topic. And the question is that why? You know that if you saw my position evaluation video, that you can understand that normally there are two different kind of advantages in the chess. There is the positional advantages, and there is the tactical advantages. So the thing is that the positional advantages are permanent, but in the other hand, the tactical advantages are temporary. So you can understand that the time in the chess is a really extremely important factor. And why is it? Because if somebody has a permanent advantage, the player should play safety and slowly improving its position. But in the other hand, if you have the temporary advantage, the time is more important because in this case you do not have time for slowly improvement. You have to keep the pressure on and you have to keep going. Otherwise, you will lose your temporary advantage. And you know the permanent advantages are the palm structural advantage, the space advantage, the material, and the king's position. The tactical advantages can be basically anything. It can be the development advantage, it can be the initiative, it can be a very nice knight outpost, it can be a semi-open line. So basically anything, but you have to understand that those are only temporary, and if something is temporary, then the time and timing becoming critical. And let's see that through an example. I was playing this game when I was a child, and my opponent is a candidate master with black. I started with e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4. The I think this is the winner variation, but I'm not sure. And for that, until a while, my favorite weapon was the bishop d2, which is objectively probably not the strongest continuation, and probably that's the reason why isn't it very popular these days. But it's extremely sharp, it's extremely interesting, and I think it provides really nice practical chances for white. He took on e4, queen g4, and and I think this is the starting position of the main line, if I remember correctly. I haven't played that for a while, and there are some really juicy variations after knight f6, queen g7, rook g8, queen h6, and there are two lines for black. One is bishop rook g6, other one is bishop f8. The difference is not too big, but sorry, I think we have to start with queen d4, because if we start with rook g6 or bishop f8, our queen can come back to e3. So black has to start with queen d4. This is the precise continuation, castling, and now rook g6, queen h4, rook g4, queen h3, queen f2, bishop e2, rook h4, and this is a very nice variation where white sacrifices a queen, but after that with g3 we also captures the opponent's queen, and this endgame is going to be very interesting. Not just because you know that the engine really favors this kind of endings for black. I mean, it's not a big difference, but still favors for black. But I have an extremely good static in these kind of positions with white. So I mean, it's objectively not the best, but gives really nice practical chances for white. And now the e3, and this is the main line. And just because I talked about the bishop f8, I wanted to show you that what's the nuance between this and the bishop f8 line. So black can also always start with bishop f8, queen h4, rook g4, queen h3. Now take on f2, bishop e2, rook h4, exchange, g3, and now the black queen can escape on h6. I mean, he can sacrifice it on h6, doesn't have to play e3, and this is the difference between rook g6 and bishop f8. It's really question of taste. So basically, both variations bit favors for black according to the engine, but now white has some material advantage, and black has to play really precisely after that. Also, there is something really cool here, that in this line, when we castle, black can make a serious mistake. Unfortunately, never happened with me during my career, and that's the knight g4 move, queen h4. Of course, cannot take on h7 because rook h8, and now queen f2 would run into queen d8, bishop g5 double check, and this is a really nice checkmate. Unfortunately, never happened with me. Nobody played knight g4 in this position for me. Okay, so it was just some theory, but let's get back to the game. My opponent played king f8 here, and I didn't really know too much about this move, so probably it's not in the theory or something very minor thing. But in the other hand, this kind of moves are very common in the French defense. So basically, black doesn't want to weaken out the black squares with g6. Instead, they play king f8, protects the g7 pawn, and after that in the future he will finish the development. So for the first sight, it seems normal, and I think probably there is nothing wrong with that. Queen e4, knight f6. Now we equalize the material, so the pawn sacrifice was only temporary, of course. Queen h4, and I think it's pretty natural move. Could be possible to come back to e3 or d3, but we would like to keep the queen active. Knight c6, and now I started to feel that somehow this move feels a bit weird. I mean, it cannot be a blunder or a mistake, but somehow for me it seems just unnatural somehow. And you know, I just continued the game with castling. And why did I feel knight c6 is unnatural somehow? Because the goal of the knight c6 is to put pressure against the d4 pawn. But the thing is that there is a thumb rule that the king in the middle is fine until the center is closed. So the king on f8 would be perfectly fine if black is able to keep the center closed. So basically, I don't see the idea behind the knight c6, because the knight c6 would put pressure against the d4 square, and if he takes my d4 pawn, that will open up the center, which according to the principles is not that good for black. So that's the reason why I felt that knight c6 is not really precise. I'm not sure what would be the best continuation, but somehow I think he should try to keep the position closed, and slowly improving, maybe with some knight d7, b6, bishop b7 plan, or c6, knight d7. I'm pretty not sure, but something slowly, because he has to keep the position and especially the center closed. Otherwise, his king could be in trouble. So, according to the principles, I didn't have to think too much about castling. Of course, it's a pawn sacrifice, it's a material sacrifice, but according to the principles, it has to be fine, because if he takes on d4, I can open up the the center. I'm not sure that I had a proper plan for knight d4. Maybe I can play knight f3, I can play knight e2, I can play knight b5. So probably those are the candidates. Even bishop e3 seems okay for the first side. So yeah, maybe bishop e3 is the best continuation. But yes, the thing is that White has many candidates here, and getting into a pin like that doesn't promise too much good. So it's not something that you have to calculate very precisely. It could be an intuitive sacrifice too. I just felt, because of the principles that I already mentioned, probably taking on d4 cannot be good, so I wasn't afraid from that. He took with the queen on d4, and now he has a material advantage. But what I always tell that at the beginning of the video, I told you the 4 positional advantages, and those advantages are the sub goals of the chess until you win the game. So getting them are extremely important. That's clear. But what I say that when you have the chance to get the positional advantage here, of course you can get the material advantage, you have to ask yourself one question or two. Can the opponent punish me for getting this advantage? Or the second question, but it can be just one question, does my opponent have satisfactory compensation for these for getting this positional advantage? Can he get any counterplay for that? And if the answer is no, then you can go and take the positional advantage for sure. But if the answer is yes, then maybe you have to think twice about that and try to understand the danger of the compensation. And I think my opponent wasn't cautious enough with taking the d4, because now he got the material advantage, which would be nice, but White gets a huge compensation for that, and the reason is that the center opened up, the d line opened up, and that's going to be extremely dangerous for the black's king in the middle. And now White has some really nice force moves. White continued with bishop f4. Now the queen is under attack, and unfortunately the queen doesn't have any proper good spaces. Like he could go on c5, but in this case I can maybe take on c7 and equalize the material, and in the other hand I also open the center, so it would make no sense for White. He couldn't get positional advantage, but in the other hand he got a lot of tactical disadvantage, and now the bishop d6 is also a threat, so there is only one space for the queen, and it's on b6. But now it's really important that if you have positional disadvantage, but you have tactical advantage, the timing is going to be extremely important. The time works for the opponent. The time works for the player with the positional advantage. If Black managed to finish his development and start to exchange some pieces, then later on in the end game he will win the game because he has an extra pawn. So, but now White has a really nice development advantage, which is a tactical advantage, and also the black king is in the middle, which is also a tactical disadvantage for the for Black. So if we would like to get something out of these advantages, we have to keep the pressure on. Otherwise, if we cannot keep the pressure, then slowly Black will protect everything, he will stabilize his position, and later he will win the game because of the material advantage. So now we have to keep the pressure and we have to be fast. So how can we keep the pressure? In these cases, there is no time for playing slowly anymore. If you have positional disadvantage, you have to keep going, and that's extremely important here. There is no space, no time for slowing down. So basically, protecting the c3 with a knight e2 or something cannot work. We have to keep going. I played knight e4, and now it's a threat, right? So it's a pressure. I would like to take on f6. It's a threat, and also it's a sacrifice. But of course, it cannot be taken because if he takes, I have rook d8 check. There is only one move he can take, and queen arrives on d8 with a checkmate. What did I say? If the center is open, the king could be in trouble in the middle, and all of that could happen because he took the pawn on d4. Otherwise, if there would be a pawn on d4, I couldn't activate my rook, and his king would be fine. So knight e4 is untouchable, but at the same time it keeps the pressure on because I would like to take on f6. It's a very concrete threat. Bishop e7 he played. It's a pretty natural move and also seems strong enough because now he pinned my queen, and if I take on f6 he can take back with the bishop, and then the queen is hanging, the b2 is hanging, everything is hanging. White is going to lose the game. So what can I do? Keep going, keep the pressure on. Bishop g5. Once again, the knight on e4 is untouchable. If he takes on e4, I take on e7 check, and if he takes, the rook arrives on d8 with a checkmate. It's clear. So the e4 is untouchable once again. And what happened again? Another threat. White keeps the pressure on. White keeps threatening. Now the f6 is hanging. He has to do something with that. But unfortunately, it's not easy anymore because there could be some tactical counter strikes like what we saw before. So basically, the f6 knight cannot move. My opponent played e5, and now, of course, if we can get back the material, then we should ask the same questions what I asked before, and if the opponent doesn't have compensation for it, we can go for that. And a small note here that you have to understand that the tactical advantage has to be converted into positional advantage. So the main goal of having a tactical advantage or get something out of that is to convert that into positional advantage. So basically we will keep going, we will keep the pressure on, but when we have the time to get back the material and there is no punishment for that, there is no compensation for that, of course we should focus on that, and because it's much better than trying to go for an unsure checkmate attack or something like that. So always focus on the positional advantages first. And fortunately, there were much more in this game, but of course I wasn't sure about that when I took on f6. I just knew that I can get back my material, I can equalize the material, which is a positional advantage, and also I can ruin his pawn structure, which is also a positional advantage, and I can also ruin his king's position, which is also a positional advantage. So I can get advantage on three different aspects of the position. So of course I would go for that. Bishop f6, bishop f6. Probably there is nothing better. The queen comes on h6, and black king is in a big trouble. Bishop f6 is an only move. Queen f6, rook g8, and now if you can develop with the tempo, it always has to be considered. Bishop c4, very simple move, but very strong move at the same time. The f7 pawn is hanging. It the checkmate is hanging, bishop e6 is not playable, of course, because I take, the king is not in, rook g8, and after rook d8 check, he had to resign because the only move would be to take on d8, and queen arrives on d8 with a checkmate. So what we can learn from this game, normally you should focus on getting positional advantages, but always have to be consider the tactical compensation for that, and you should avoid taking the positional advantage if the opponent has satisfactory compensation and counterplay chances for that. If no, then you can get it. And the other hand, what I mentioned, that having the tactical advantage has to be converted into positional advantage in the future. And soon I'm coming with the second part of this video series. Take care.